out of all of the Just Plays that I've ever wanted to do, this is the one that I've wanted to do the most. We're here.
Been waiting years.
Finally talking about Persona 4. Michael Huber, you finished it for the first time last week, and we all have a lot to say. Yeah. I know we go a little nuts on Persona with this website, but we've never actually sat down and talked about why we love Persona, and specifically Persona 4, so much. So,
Buckle
as
up.
someone who just recently finished, why don't you get us started?
Okay. Wow. The most human characters I think I have ever encountered. Oh, by the way, spoiler alert.
Entire episode.
Huge. Don, I'm looking at you. Giant spoiler warning coming at the screen now. Here it is.
Right.
We are about to dive deep into the Persona 4 lore. If you do not want this beautiful gem, this masterpiece spoiled.
And you don't want it spoiled.
You do not
the
want this
whole
game
point of the
spoiled.
game
Yeah,
is the story.
Duck out.
Duck out now. There's the warning, giving you 3 more seconds to close your browser. 2, 1.
Now it's on you.
Fair game.
Yeah, awesome, awesome.
There is something so real about these characters that it touched my personal life and just touched my heart. I connected to these people like they were friends, like they were lovers, like they were fathers and sisters and family. And for a video game to do that, it was a profound experience. And for all the hype surrounding this game, and for Brad letting me borrow his copy over a year ago, and for you two every day to be like, you gotta play this game, it's 10 out of 10, it's a masterpiece, for it to even exceed that level of expectations, I mean, I'm getting emotional right now just thinking about it.
For me personally, you know, I adore JRPGs. Like whenever a JRPG comes up, I jump right on it for review or for whatever it is, or as much as I possibly can. And the series that started that for me was Final Fantasy. And the reason I fell in love with Final Fantasy is because I related to those characters so much. You know, I got so invested in their personal stories and their struggles, and I wanted to see them succeed. And it was something that I hadn't felt in a game that way, but before. And as Final Fantasy went on, as it got older, I felt like the series sort of lost that somewhere along the line, and especially, particularly with the 13 trilogy. I was just like, this is about the glitz, this is about the glamour. These characters feel hollow. I just am not connecting with them. And then I ran into Persona 3 and then Persona 4. And, you know, when somebody sits you down and they say, what is Persona 4 about? You can say, well, it's about these kids who go into this TV world to solve a murder, and they summon these crazy demons. But, you know, that's not actually what matters in Persona. It's about these characters, and you learn about their fears and their hopes and how they band together and the struggles they go through. That's what Persona 4 is about.
Yeah, like Delcast tweeted me immediately after I said that I had finished it, and he was like, yeah, that ending was kind of a letdown, like crappy ending. And I felt the complete opposite way, as I usually do with Delcast. It wasn't about the plot, it wasn't about the ending, it was about getting there. And when all of those characters that you've maxed your social links with and that you've taken the time to spend time with them, when they come in like a vision to you and they're there and they're urging you on, it was so emotional.
Yeah, because it means something, and people make such a big deal out of like, okay, I don't have time to play Persona because it's 70 hours, which is true.
Yeah. I said that.
Yeah,
100 times you.
Yeah, we made a joke out of it. You would go, it's a time sink. Yeah, we would make fun of that. But the thing that I want to emphasize, and it's hard to realize until you actually sit down and play the game, is yes, it's 70 hours long, but it uses all of those hours. You get to know these people and become familiar with them in a way that you never would at any other point. There are very few moments in Persona 4, maybe outside of the opening, where I'm like, okay, this is really dragging, or they're not utilizing this to further these characters along in some way. It's not just a long game, it's a long game crammed with meaningful stuff.
Even the silly stuff I felt like was meaningful.
Absolutely.
Like going on the camping trips and everything like that. It's
Yeah.
just like, it's really silly, but somehow you connect to the characters even through that.
Right, exactly. And something that I struggle with at some JRPGs, and it's a really good point that you bring up, and even this applies to anime as well, is you have characters that get into these really serious situations and they find the strength. Maybe it's through friends, or maybe it's through, just their own perseverance, but they forget how to have fun. And because they don't have this fun side to them, it's hard to connect with. And there are so many absolutely hilarious, genuinely endearing and funny moments in Persona, and it only further attaches you to these people.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think for the overall plot, I'm obsessed with murder mysteries and that nonsense, but I think that there was a mystery for so long was kind of the carrot on the stick.
Yeah.
In terms of the grand scheme of things, and all that is in between that is the meat, is the character interaction, is the relation. So it's like when you go on this camping trip, it's just a break away from the dungeons and the intensity of that. It's refreshing. It's so meaningful, like you said.
It feels like high school kids.
It does. The things that these characters go through, you went through in high school.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's very important.
Yeah, it's like they're battling inside TVs, getting ridiculous, but then they actually do real things high school kids do.
Right. And, something that I want to bring up is I don't think these characters would matter if they were just idealized versions of high school kids. One of my favorite parts about Persona 4 is, in order to summon the things that they use in combat, the personas, they have to kind of own up to a really shitty part of themselves. Yeah. For example, Yukiko has to realize that she kind of actually does view herself as this unattainable, really gorgeous looking, like conceited person. And once she does that, once she realizes that, hey, I can't get rid of this part of me, this is a bad part of me, I have to accept it, then she gains the strength to fight. And what a cool thing, you know what I mean? Yeah. Never in that game are they like, okay, this bad part of me is gone. It's about acceptance, and I think that's a really mature way of looking at something. Yeah. It's a level of depth that you just don't get out of other JRPGs.
Yeah, I mean, you see them dealing with it the entire game.
Yeah.
Like Kanji is a great example with that.
Yep.
Like his feelings towards Naoto and everything. Like he doesn't really know which way to swing.
Right. And
you're waiting for this fairy tale moment, and it never really comes. It's because he, like you said, he doesn't know.
Yeah.
There are so many situations where the things don't tie up nicely, and that's such an important facet of the game.
Because life isn't neat.
Kind of transitioning a little bit.
That's an Ian Hink moment right there.
Ian Hink joint. Yeah. He's still working his way through Persona 4. Maybe
Slowly.
one day we can get him on the couch. We always talk about the characters in Persona 4, but something that I also want to bring up that I really admire is how the social elements of Persona 4 blend into the gameplay. In order to be your absolute best in combat, you have to go seek out these people and go to dinner with them, help them with their homework, do all of these things. And by doing that, your persona gets stronger. And I think it's such an ingenious way to blend the story elements with the mechanics.
Yeah, I can remember finishing a dungeon and then just having time to go and nurture those relationships. And if a dungeon was getting too hard and you were hanging out with friends and doing that, you would gain abilities, and then that would help in combat, which I really liked. So there was never... It was just a nice way to ease the grind, I guess, of the dungeons, is being able to leave, for the time being, and go out into the world and, take the beef bowl challenge or go on a date with someone. So definitely. Just you can go at your own pace.
Absolutely. And people, you even asked me this when they're playing through Persona 4 for the first time. They're like, what social links should I master? And it's like the way the game presents you with situations is just do what you want to do. You know, you will naturally gravitate towards.
I just did what
certain
felt right.
people. Yeah, and I think that makes it a more genuine experience if you don't treat it like every other RPG where it's like, okay, I have to min-max, I have to do everything correctly. It's like, no, you know, go in there, and if you max your rank with Chie, which you absolutely should, and you don't max anybody
100%.
else, you know, that you'll feel more attached to the characters that you just came to on your own rather than looking at a walkthrough or wiki.
The fusing is the only intimidating part, I'd say.
Sure.
For me at least, I was always worried. And then not gaining experience for party members that are out of your party always freaked me out too, because some people have like strengths. I know you can, you know, if you're really crazy at it, you can put skill, you can really customize your skills for each persona. So you can go about it that way. But there was a little tension of getting the right personas and having the right people leveled before tackling a dungeon.
Yeah.
I totally get where you're coming from. You know, most RPGs, you have like a very linear progression. As your level goes up, you get stronger, or you have a skill tree where it's like, okay, you can only go down these 3 paths or whatever it is. Something that I've always admired about Shin Megami Tensei is even though fusing is not always obvious, they've gotten better at explaining things to players over time. There is a level of freedom there that I really admire, where, you know, they don't say, okay, you need this to beat this boss. You kind of just experiment, and the demons that you have at the end of your playthrough are going to be different than the demons at mine. And I think it just makes me a little bit more invested in battles where it's like, okay, I threw 3 personas together to make this one thing. I hope it pays off. I think that's a really cool element of the game.
And just maxing your social link, and then you get like the Super Saiyan version of.
Right.
So there's always that carrot on the stick.
Why don't you tell us about the callbacks to previous personas?
Sure, yeah. In Persona 4, you go to Gekkoukan High, and
I'm glad you told me about this before, because I was paying more attention when I got there.
Yeah, you run into one of the supporting characters from Persona 3, and she talks about how the main character helped her get over her awkwardness and her shyness, and she went on as an upperclassman to go do all these great and wonderful things. And that's so cool, you know, because they don't overdo it. You're not constantly reminded of Persona 3, but you get some follow-up on a story, you know. The worlds are connected, but they're never truly interfering with each other, which I think is rad.
Yeah.
And talking about the world, just, you know, we briefly touched on this when we were doing the Persona 5 trailer, the small town vibe.
Yeah.
I mean,
They really nail it.
oh, when I would go home to Dojima's house and just be in that living room, it felt like home, you know. This was one of the coziest environments I've ever been in. It felt so good after a long day to just get home. Nanako's watching TV. Dojima's reading the paper. It just felt so good. You go up to your room. It's like, all right, what should I do? Should I study a little bit? Should I make some origamis?
They walk this incredibly fine line between not being like hickish or feeling like stereotypes and not being too on the nose with it, because, you know, Nanako, to her, because she's from this small town, going to Junez, which is essentially like a Walmart, is a big deal for her. She gets excited about it. She sings the commercials, right? Whereas if she lived in the city, maybe she wouldn't, Junez would be like, whatever, it's no big deal. And those small touches go such a long way in making Inaba feel like this warm, connected, intimate place.
For the longest time, I thought the song was going to be some kind of hypnotism spell, because it would always make a big deal when it would come on. She would sing it.
Yeah.
For the longest time, I was like, there's something so sinister about this song.
No, she just loves Junez, and, you know, if people ever want to know, hey, how much does music really affect a game's mood?
my
God,
Yeah.
dude.
I mean, Persona 4 would be a fraction of the game that it is without that wonderful,
It'd be a
amazing
completely different game
soundtrack.
to me.
Yeah.
I have been binge listening to the soundtrack lately. Oh my God, I'm obsessed. I'm humming it in the shower. I'm listening to it in my sleep.
And one of the biggest things that I respect about the soundtrack is, so many JRPG soundtracks, while good, kind of sound the same. You have kind of like the cozy town music, and then you have the really heavy guitar battle music, and you get that in Persona 4, but I think what I love about it is a soundtrack that's not afraid to be happy. You have this really like upbeat girl being like, heartbeat, heartbeat. It's just, outside of that context, I think maybe it would be a little bit cheesy, but it works so well. It just adds this warmth to the town.
And the fact that they change it in each dungeon.
Yeah.
I'll never forget, what's his name? It's escaping me. The video game dungeon, like Mafu or Mabu, what's his name?
Oh,
The guy with the
God.
crazy black eyes.
No, it's remember.
Mako?
Yeah.
Something like that? Yeah.
The 8-bit remix of the song going in that dungeon was so awesome.
Yeah. And, Shoji Meguro, the guy who does the music for the Persona games, if you go back and you listen to the Persona 3 soundtrack, it's like you can see, okay, these elements definitely, some of them carried over to Persona 4 and other projects, but Persona 3, being set in a much bigger city, has like an urban feel to it. There's rap, there's more aggressiveness to it. And the fact that he was able to kind of be like, okay, what should a small town sound like, I think is rad.
Even little touches in that game, like having each dungeon have a different theme as compared to Persona 3, pretty much, where it's
Right.
like
You're
you're
just
in
stuck in one
Tartarus,
thing.
pretty much. I think that was like a big deal for me. That really like helped break the monotony for me.
Yeah. All right. We're getting to the end of the road. I feel like we could talk about this game
all day.
forever. Are there any closing thoughts, or maybe better, which character were you most attached to?
Easy.
Lay it on me.
Easy.
Lay it on me.
Nanako.
Nanako.
Nanako. Why were you attached to Nanako?
I cared for her so much. I wanted her to have a happy life. I wanted to be the big brother. I wanted to take care of her. She's had a tough life, a tough childhood. Dojima's never around. Her mom was ripped from her life, at an early age. And yeah, I just cared so much about her being happy. Like, oh, it hurt when she is in the hospital. I've only cried a few times in video games.
Oh, man.
I was weeping. Like a little boy, I was just weeping my eyes out. And that was just a gut-wrenching, emotional moment that I don't think I'll ever forget.
I love it.
Ever. I will never forget that moment.
I was surprised how much I cared about all those characters in that game.
Yeah.
It's like unbelievable. And I remember debating with myself for a long time. I'm like, am I going to pick Chie or Naoto? And it's
Yeah.
like, why am I getting this worked up about this?
Right.
I mean, ultimately, I settled on Chie. It's Chie's best girl.
It had nothing to do with their stats or
Exactly.
what abilities they brought
Yeah,
in.
exactly.
It's just you cared about them as a character. Yeah, I think for me, maybe unsurprisingly, it's Chie, but I don't know if I've ever gotten to explain why.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me why, man. You were like, in
I
love.
yeah, it's not that like I love her or whatever it is. I just think she's a really cool character because in many ways there's nothing feminine about her, and how proud she is of that. She loves meat. She loves kung fu movies. She loves just being loud, and she's kind of annoying sometimes. She has a really nasally voice, but she's so comfortable with herself and so positive.
She's hyped.
You don't get that a lot in games, and as somebody who struggles with identity sometimes, it's like, okay, you are not at all what society expects you to be, and you embrace that, and I think that's so cool. So just, I found a bit of myself in Chie and really got attached. So
Yeah. Now we got to move on to Arena. Keep
yeah.
that story going.
Oh man, for a fighting game, Persona 4 Arena really treats that story with respect and care that it deserves. And perhaps even bigger than that, Persona 5 is on its way.
Oh my God.
June-S Persona 5. You'll go there. It's happening.
I hope not. I hope not.
Not that June-S, a June-S.
I hope
Because
not.
it's a chain, right?
I want, for so long, we've gotten to spend a lot of time with all these great characters. I want Persona 5 to take me someplace else, to build up its own identity.
I think it'll have just like the same kind of small callback like 4
Yeah.
does. It won't be huge though.
We'll see. I'm excited.
Oh, that's like an extremely understatement how excited we are.
Yeah, it is. It's a huge understatement.
Nanako.
So we finally did it. We finally got to share some of our thoughts on Persona 4. Now you have to beat Persona 3 so we
Yeah.
can sit back on this.
I'm
couch
working
and do
on it.
again.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Good
guys.
grief.
Yep.
Victory!